New York Times today published an op-ed from Nasser Al-Awlaki. It's called "The Drone That Killed My Grandson." So let me explain what happened here. Abdulrahman Al-Awlaki was a 16-year-old who was an American citizen. He was killed on October 14th of 2011 by a drone strike from the United States of America. It killed him, his teenage cousin, and 5 other civilians. Now, the U.S. government has never explained why they killed this 16-year-old. They refused to talk about it and said it was a state secret for a great majority of the time. Finally, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, said he was not specifically targeted, though he refused to say who in fact was targeted in that drone strike. Given that there was 2 teenagers and 5 civilians, gee, I wonder why they don't want to talk about it. At the best case scenario, a horrific mistake that killed not only civilians and children, but a United States citizen that should not have been executed. So now his grandfather wants to ask why this happened. So let's set up the whole family tree here so you know what we're talking about. The grandfather who wrote the op-ed is Nasser Al-Awlaki. I'm going to tell you his story in just a second. Now, the father in this case is Anwar Al-Awlaki. Now, he was on our most wanted list. He's also a U.S. citizen, and he was not given a trial, not even in absentia. He was not indicted. Without due process, he was executed. Now, a lot of people say, but he was on our most wanted list. We know he did propaganda for Al-Qaeda. We're not positive that he was operational with Al-Qaeda, but that's what the government says, and some say we trust the government. So we're not talking about him. He was also killed in a drone strike 2 weeks before his son was killed. In fact, his son had gone to try to look for his father because he missed him, but he could not find him. His father was executed, and afterwards he called to his grandfather who wrote this op-ed and said, the 16-year-old said, I'm coming home because obviously my father's dead, and so I'll come right back home. That's the last time anybody ever heard from him because a U.S. drone strike also killed him. Okay, now that's Abdulrahman Al-Awlaki, the last person in that picture you see. And now, his grandfather is the one that wrote the op-ed and explains first his own story. And I thought this was incredibly touching, and honestly it reminded me of my father's story, who's a Turkish immigrant who came to this country and loves it, and for the same reasons that Nasser Al-Awlaki talks about. He says, from 1966 to 1977, I fulfilled a childhood dream and studied in the United States as a Fulbright scholar, earning my doctorate and then working as a researcher and assistant professor at universities in New Mexico, Nebraska, and Minnesota. Now, so far, great. This is exactly what we want. The smartest people in all of these different countries coming here. He's a Fulbright scholar, getting an education, and working at our universities. Terrific. He continues, I have fond memories of those years. When I first came to the United States as a student, my host family took me camping by the ocean and on road trips to places like Yosemite, Disneyland, and New York, and it was wonderful. See, this is what I want you to realize, because a lot of you who grew up in this generation might be just shocked by that. The United States being open to immigrants, specifically the Muslim immigrants, taking them into their own families, taking them on vacations. But you have to understand something. This country used to be great and open and welcoming. It's not an accident that it says on the Statue of Liberty, give me your wretched and your poor. We are a country of immigrants, and we used to welcome that. My father has the same exact story. He comes to study here at Stevens Institute of Technology. He's trying to get his master's in engineering. He hardly speaks the language, but American families take him in. One family took him and his new wife, when he got married to my mother, down to Miami on vacation with them, stayed in a really nice house. They had the time of their lives. This country was enormously welcoming to immigrants, and it was a golden era. Now, they might have done other things that were wrong in foreign policy, etc., but when immigrants came here, they couldn't help but say, God, I love America. That was my dad's experience. That's why he brought us back eventually to this country to become citizens and to live here. That was apparently Nasser Al-Awlaki's experience. And then he went back home and brought some of the knowledge to his home country. Also terrific. He explains, after returning to Yemen, I used my American education and skills to help my country, serving as Yemen's Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries and establishing one of the country's leading institutions of higher learning, IB University. You can't ask for a better story. Now, I know what a lot of conservatives or right-wingers will say, but look at his son turned on us. And you can make that argument. But remember, in his son's time, we were not welcoming. What we did was we did things like invading literally random Muslim countries like Iraq. Iraq, no connection to 9/11, did not attack us, did not have weapons of mass destruction. We're like, Dick Cheney said they're in the same region of the world from which the 9/11 terrorists came. In other words, they're Muslims, so we hit them. Who cares if they actually attacked us? Gee, I wonder why we turned some people against us. Now, that's not an excuse for what Anwar al-Awlaki might or might not have done. But this story isn't about him. It's about his 16-year-old son. You know, the 16-year-old was not the terrorist. He lost track of his father for years. That's why he went searching for him, because he missed his father. He had nothing to do with what his father did. Nothing. He wasn't in the same town as him. He didn't live with him. He didn't have knowledge of that as far as anyone knows. So you cannot pass the sins of the father onto a 16-year-old American citizen. So again, the grandfather explains, a country that believes it does not even need to answer for a killing of its own is not the America I once knew. How true that is. And then he talks about his grandson. He says, Abdulrahman was born in Denver. He lived in America until he was 7, then came to live with me in Yemen. He was a typical teenager. He watched The Simpsons, listened to Snoop Dogg, read Harry Potter, and had a Facebook page with many friends. Then he said, Abdulrahman used to tell me he wanted to follow in my footsteps and go back to America to study. I can't bear to think of those conversations now. Oh God, why do we kill this kid? And the government won't tell us. Everything's a secret now. Everything's a secret. We assassinate people in secret. The legal reasons behind it are secret. The operational parts of it are secret. Why we execute underage U.S. citizens is a secret. That's insane. It's supposed to be our government. What difference does it make that he happened to be at Yemen at the time? If you're on vacation, let's say you're doing Peace Corps and you're in Yemen, or you're on vacation in a foreign country, Italy. I mean, think about the precedent. Once you say you can execute a U.S. citizen as long as he's abroad, there is no legal distinction between Italy and Yemen. Everybody is fair game the minute they step outside the country. Oh, you went to Tijuana? Drone strike. Now, it hasn't happened yet in Mexico or in Italy, but it has happened in Yemen. So is the answer, well, if you're a U.S. citizen, you better not go to a Muslim country because we might kill you over there. There is no justification for killing him. And until they tell us why in the world they did that drone strike, it is clearly illegal, deeply immoral, and what I believed was un-American. And finally, Nasser al-Awlaki says, my grandson was killed by his own government. The Obama administration must answer for its actions and be held accountable. And he's trying to do that in court, in a federal court in Washington. Unfortunately, certainly the Democrats do not want to hold President Obama accountable. He's a Democratic president. The Republicans think drone strikes are fantastic. This is the one thing they agree with President Obama on, largely, some libertarian exceptions like Rand Paul some of the time. But overall, we have bipartisan agreement. Kill U.S. citizens abroad, don't even bother telling us why. And of course, most of the media just goes along and bows their head. This is not the America we knew and loved. That America did exist at one time. We can go back to it, but we're very, very far away from it right now.